Good afternoon. Captain Justin DeLeon here from the University of Iowa, APMS here at Iowa, and also the MS3 instructor. Today, what we're going to talk about is op orders. And today we're really going to focus on the situation paragraph, the first paragraph of the operation order. The main reference for today is the Ranger Handbook, TC 3-21.76, April 2017. So when we talk about op orders, we want to focus on the first paragraph. Now, even before the first paragraph, the first thing that we're going to go into to make sure our squads are tracking things is we're going to talk about the task organization. So within the task organization, this is where we codify what our squads are doing. And so they have a frame of reference, how to listen, how to understand the brief that they're about to receive. All right, so the first thing I do is I label all my squads. I got first, second, third, I got fourth squad. And I need to identify what function they're going to be doing on this operation. So for simplistic view here, first squad, you'll be security. Second, you'll be assault 1. Third, you'll be assault 2. And fourth, you'll be weapons squad. So I give them their function, all right, squad by function, and then it doesn't have to be this way. You know, third could be security, first could be weapons, however you deem necessary. But we want to make sure they know what they're doing. Additionally, what we like to do is we like to give them their task and purpose. So now they have a really great frame of reference that they can be listening to the order and really understand how different things apply to them or apply to other people. So for security, I might be like, hey, let's say we're doing a raid. Your job is to isolate the objective in order to deny enemy freedom of maneuver. Give them their task and purpose for each squad so they understand what their role is. And that's going to give them a better frame of reference for the whole thing. All right. Let's move into the actual operational then. The first paragraph, as we said, is the situation paragraph. All right. And the purpose of the situation paragraph is we're about to do an operation, you know, in some area that we may or may not be familiar with. We need to make sure that we understand the environment we're about to fight in. We need to know where we're operating, things that might affect us. We need to understand how the weather and terrain are either going to help or hurt our operation, how we're going to use it to our advantage. We need to understand what the enemy is going to be doing in our environment or where they're at, because they obviously, they obviously play a role. And then we need to understand the civilian populace, if they're going to be friendly, what that's going to look like, and also, our surrounding friendly forces, how they are going to affect our operation as well. So gaining that understanding is going to help us move then into the operation and really develop a great plan. Okay? So the first thing we need to talk about is our area of operation. Usually just call it our AO, but this is the area of operation. So an area of operation, what that defines is the specific geographical area that we're operating in. All right? We're going to define it. We're going to say this is where we will be physically in. We won't physically be outside of this area at any time. So let's say, for instance, we got a grid square here that we're going to be operating in. All right. Let's say it's 0,8 to the north, the northing, and then over here we're at 0,1. So we're in the 0,1, 0,8 grid square. This is the grid square we're going to operate in, and we define that in the area of operation. We'll be in the Echo Golf 0,1, 0,8 grid square. The next thing we need to talk about AI. And this is the area of interest. The area of interest is not anything within your AO. So doctrinally, the area of interest is actually also a defined geographical area. But the best way to describe this, especially when you're briefing your op order, is to label things outside of your AO that can affect you in your AO. For example, let's say we have a large town here, the large civilian populace, and they're southeast of our area of operation. However, this populace can easily move into our AO, so we want to maintain eyes on it. We want to have situational awareness of what's going on in that town. Makes sense. What if the enemy has a mortar section that is outside of our AO, but they can put rounds into our AO? That is something we want to have eyes on as well. That's something we want to maintain situational awareness of. If they can affect our AO, we want to know about it, all right? And those are the things that we really need to label in the area of interest. There also is another thing called the area of influence, and it's things that you can influence outside of your AO, from within your AO. We don't need to worry about that right now, okay? So once we've codified the AO and the AI, now we can move into defining a little bit more of the environment. All right? The first thing that we like to talk about is the weather, all right? The weather. So when we're talking about the weather, there is, when you get into the intel side and some detailed analysis of the weather, there's all these things you want to look at: cloud cover, precipitation, wind, humidity, all these things that can affect some major operations. But when it comes down to it, what you need to get across, the intent that we need is, what does the weather look like, one, and then two, how is it going to affect our operation? Do we have some type of precipitation? Is it raining? Is it snowing? All right. How is this going to affect us? Is this going to make our movement challenging because it's going to be muddy out? If we're doing a reconnaissance, is it going to be favorable to us? Because the more it's raining, the harder it is for an enemy objective to see us, to observe us, and it's also more difficult for them to hear us as we sneak around the objective to try and gain PIR on them. All these different things can affect us. Is it really dry out? If it's dry out, are we going to have dust clouds by walking or by vehicles? Is it extremely hot out? Is hydration going to be an issue? All right. Is it cold temperatures? Are we going to be needing additional equipment, additional uniform material? We need Gore-Tex tops and bottoms on. Whatever we need, all right, the weather is going to affect us. And at the end, so one, we need to label key things that the weather has that is going on, how it's going to affect us. But we also need to understand who it favors. Does the weather favor enemy? Does the weather favor friendly? A lot of times, worse conditions favor aggressive units, attacking units, because especially if it's cold out, people like to get bunkered down. People like to, they lose sight of what's going on. They stare off into the space. So a lot of times, intense and extreme weather conditions, in my opinion, favor the aggressor. All right. So we need to talk through that and discuss those things. All right. Once we're done weather, okay, we really need to talk about terrain. So terrain will be next. I'll get rid of this. We are going to codify a little bit more how we analyze the terrain. Terrain. The way we like to use terrain and to analyze it is by using a term called OPORD. I've also heard OCOCA. There's different ways of doing it, but we're going to do it this way. All right? And we're going to use these 5 tenets to help us truly analyze the terrain and what it looks like. So first of all, let's look on let's say we got objective red here. Actually, since I'm using a black marker, objective black. This is our objective inside of our AO. All right? And we're going to do different things to look at how we analyze this terrain. So the first step is obstacles. There are going to be natural obstacles that are going to affect this operation. All right? So let's say we are currently located right here. This is our platoon. Got a river here, and maybe there is a couple LDA trails. All right? These are natural obstacles that we're going to have to cross to get to our objective. We want to label those. We want to point them out. We want to know, hey, we're going to have to cross 2 LDAs to get to our objective. That being said, there might be some intense inclines around here. We may have to go over some high elevation terrain, some high hills. That's going to also disrupt our movement. These are obstacles that are going on that are going to have an effect on our movement, on our operation. Okay? We're not talking about here, what we are not talking about is enemy and placed obstacles. We're talking about sea wire, mines, anti-tank ditches, whatever it may be. That is going to go into our enemy analysis, not here. This is for more man-made, or basically natural type obstacles that are going to affect our operation. The next thing we're going to talk about is avenues of approach. And really what we're trying to focus on here is avenues of approach in and out of our objective. Okay, so as we look at our objective, we might look at and see some terrain around here that's heavily vegetated. You got severely degraded terrain here that's difficult to move through. Same up here. And then, same up here. And what we're going to see is there's some natural avenues of approach that people are going to move into this objective through. So, for instance, you may have an avenue of approach kind of from our direction. We might have one over here. We might have another one right here. Now, if we get into the analysis real deep, we start identifying which avenues of approach the enemy is going to use as opposed to which avenues of approach the friendly is going to use. But for now, we just have avenue of approach. We have 3 of them. So we're going to label them now. So this is AOA 1, this is AOA 2, and this is AOA 3. All right? And that's how we're going to discuss them here. And we're going to describe them to our members of our platoon. So I'm going to say, right here, AOA 1, it is moving from east to west. The AO, it contains a platoon-sized mobility corridor. It's largely flat terrain. It's through, it goes over some elevated terrain. There's one river crossing alongside of it. Whatever, you're going to describe that AOA and what it looks like. All right, and so you're going to talk about each AOA, AOA 1, AOA 2, AOA 3, and give that description. All right. Now let's go to key terrain. The next one, key terrain. Is going to talk about specific terrain on this objective, all right? And the definition of key terrain is a piece of terrain that gives a marked advantage to whether it's friendly or enemy. Whoever owns it, it is giving them a marked advantage on the objective. So let's just say, for instance, that there is a hilltop right here that gives great observation and fields of fire over the objective. I'm probably going to mark this as key terrain. The key terrain is typically marked with purple. It doesn't have to be. You don't have the space, but this is a piece of key terrain. So let's say on this objective, I only have one key terrain. Well, I'm going to label it again, just like I did the avenues approach. I'm going to go KT1. I'm going to give the grid for where it's located at, and then I'm going to say why. Why is this key terrain? Why is this piece of terrain key terrain? If I had KT2, if I had 2 pieces of key terrain, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to give them their grid, and I'm going to tell them why it's key terrain. That's very important, so everyone understands why it is. Because the point is if I have to go seize that piece of key terrain, what should I expect? It's key terrain. I should expect the enemy to be there. I should expect there to be a fight. All right? We both want that because it's going to give such a marked advantage over our objective. Okay, once we're done with key terrain, the next thing we're going to talk about is observation and fields of fire. Observation and fields of fire. All right, and this is where we're really looking at our terrain specifically within our AO. And we're looking at, hey, what does observation look in certain locations? What does it look like in others? And same with fields of fire. Am I able to shoot in certain locations, or is the terrain so heavily vegetated that I can only shoot maybe 20, 30 meters in front of me? All right? So I need to discuss that. So I'm probably going to talk about what the observation fields of fire looks like right here, maybe on the objective, and then also on my avenue approach that I'm taking in. All right? What does it look like on this hilltop here? Does this hilltop provide unlimited observation and fields of fire against this objective? In the dense terrain, in the dense vegetation there, maybe I can only observe and have fields of fire up to 50 meters. Give distances. Give distances for where you are. 50 meters, unlimited, 150 meters, something like that. Give distances so people have an idea going into the mission what their observation fields of fire are going to look like throughout the AO. The last one is cover and concealment. And just to recap, the difference between cover and concealment. Concealment hides you from observation of the enemy, it hides you and makes you less visible. Cover actually stops bullets. So cover is something hard, structure that will actually stop bullets and protect you from hostile fire. All right? So I'm going to talk about, similar to observation and fields of fire, I'm going to talk over these 2 tenets throughout the objective. Hey, when I'm in this dense vegetation, I'm going to have great cover with trees and concealment from the trees as well. When I'm on the objective, it's an open space, so I have very limited cover concealment. Along our AO, I don't have a lot of concealment, there's not a lot of vegetation, however, there is some elevated terrain that will provide me cover at key points. All right, now, everyone kind of has an understanding and can see the overall picture. All right. All right, once we've done with terrain, we kind of use weather and terrain to really define the environment, what it looks like. All right, now we need to define what the enemy is going to look like on our objective, what we think they're going to be doing. So the next we're going to talk about is enemy. I'm going to use the red marker because that's how we talk about enemy. So what is the enemy forces going to be doing on the objective? There's certain things, there's different ways to analyze the enemy. There's different levels of in depth that you can go. You can go incredibly in depth on what the enemy's going to do. For our instance here, for a platoon op order, we're going to talk a little bit general, but this is the main things. These are the main things that you need to have. So one, you need to have their composition. All right, what are they composed of? What do they have? All right, you're going to write this out in a sentence probably, but what do they have? Let's say they have a 6 to 9 man squad. All right, what do they look like? Are they, insurgents? Are they uniformed? Okay, so they're Army regulars. I'm probably going to say their equipment they have. All right, AK-47s, PKMs. I'm going to describe that. And I'm probably going to describe level of training and morale. This is going to give me a good picture for who I'm fighting. All right? I'm probably not knowing yet where they're at on the map, but I know who I'm fighting against. I know who to expect. Okay? It's very important. Next, I'm going to go into the disposition. And the way I talk through the disposition, as I talk through, there are different courses of action. All right? So, disposition really turns into COA1 and COA2. A lot of times what you'll see is the most dangerous and the most likely courses of action. That is another way that people describe it. But we're talking about COA1 and COA2. So for COA1, we basically have the 6 to 9 man squad is going to be operating in zone. They'll withdraw upon contact. If we make contact with them, they're going to withdraw off the objective. COA2, which is probably a little more dangerous, they are going to retain that objective, and there's a QRF force about 30 minutes east of our location that is ready to respond. Okay, so now we've got to be ready for both those courses of action. But understanding this is the two things that the enemy might do will help us delineate what's going on. We might talk about, as well, we might go into more detail, hey, we expect enemy OPs here, enemy OP here. The squad is actually going to be in the objective itself, all right? And then there's that potential QRF over here, platoon size QRF. Also, we're going to mention the mortars, how they can affect operations on the objective. Okay, so we're going to talk about all that, but frame it in, hey, course of action 1, this is what we expect. Course of action 2, that's what we expect if they go a different route. Okay, both must be feasible. We can't say crazy things like they're going to go, they're going to drop a nuclear warhead on this objective. They both must be feasible and make sense. All right. The last thing when it comes to enemy that I want to talk about is I want to talk about their strengths and weaknesses. And I can just list them. All right, I want to talk about, hey, strength is, this element is completely decentralized. They have the ability to call the QRF. If they need it on their own, they have the ability to withdraw on their own. They have their flexibility. They maintain maneuverability. However, on the weakness side, it's because of the fact that they're so decentralized, they don't have a large support system. So they may not have the support of mortars. They may not have indirect fire support. They also probably have very minimal logistical support. So if we cut them off, they can't last very long once they fire all the rounds. So things like this are great things to point out with strengths and weaknesses, and it kind of helps us know who the advantage is going to go to on this objective. Okay? Again, you can go very, very in-depth on the enemy forces, but these are the things that we got to have. What looks best, again, for these courses of action, if it's like a mission statement. So saying, hey, 1 6 to 9 man squad is going to be conducting defensive operations on objective black, in order to deny or in order to protect a satellite dish. We expect them to have 2 OPs forward and expect them to have at least 6 individuals on the objective itself. That right there at the platoon level is going to give me a good basic understanding of what I need to do to conduct offensive operations on this objective. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about after enemy forces is we need to talk about civilian considerations. So civilian considerations is very important because civilians on the battlefield have an effect on our operation, obviously. We talked about earlier, hey, there might be a town over here southeast, all right, town, team for town. There might be a town southeast of our AO with a lot of civilians in it, and they might have our effect on our operation. The biggest thing really at this platoon level is you do need to know who the people are, and you need to know if there are civilians in your AO that could potentially move inside your AO. The biggest thing you need to know is what do they look like, what do they normally wear and dress, and 2, are they hostile? So basically uniform, or how do they look? Hostile, friendly, or neutral. And then lastly, what's your expectations? Do you expect them? All right? Do you expect them on the battlefield? Are you going to have to conduct a key leader engagement with someone at some point? Some type of leader, police, or whatever it may be, elder of a tribe or a town. We need to know this. If they're hostile to us, that's really important. We need to know that. We must understand that, hey, these people, 1, they can be an actual lethal threat to us, but 2, they're going to house and support enemy fighters in the area, potential enemy insurgents or guerrilla warfare type personnel. Next, we're going to talk about friendly forces. So the first thing we're going to put under friendly forces is real simple, and we're just going to copy it basically from our company op order, is our higher unit mission. So we're going to literally now write that out. Now, higher unit mission is our company level mission statement. We want to make sure we have the higher unit mission because we need to know how we're going to fit into the puzzle, how we're going to fit into our overall commander's intent. And we need to ensure that everyone in our platoon knows as well, how are we going to fit in the overall operation, okay? Second, we're now going to talk about our left and right elements. Left and right units. And really what this is going after is where are our other platoons at on this objective within our AO, okay? So let's say we're first platoon, we need to know where second and third platoon are, maybe fourth if there is a fourth. So let's say that let's say that here's our objective, let's say there's this road going through it, all right? Now obviously this is a high-speed avenue approach into our objective, and we're doing a raid. So maybe at the company level, what we're going to do is second and third platoon are going to do an operation to help secure our flanks. So let's say they put, we're down here again, let's say they put third platoon right here, conducting an ambush on the road. And they put second platoon right here, conducting an ambush on this area of the road. Now that this gives them the ability to protect our flanks or to deny enemy freedom maneuver in and out of the objective. Okay? And so we need to make sure now we say, hey, what is second platoon doing? What's third platoon doing? And we're probably going to list their mission statement again, just kind of like we do with the enemy, but we're going to say what their mission statement is. And now we know exactly where they're at and what they're doing. And this is important. It's important to have situational awareness of our friendly elements in the AO. One, we need to know what they're doing so we can understand how everyone's meeting to the overall intent. But second, who knows if we need them to enforce us, or maybe something goes wrong on one of their operations and we need to reinforce them or move to their location and support them in some way. And the last thing we want to do when some of our buddies need help is trying to plot where they are on the map, trying to figure out what they're doing, where they're at. We should already have that down at all times. We should have situational awareness of where our sister platoons are at in their operation, so if at any time they need our support, we are ready to respond at a moment's notice. All right? The last thing that we're going to have here is attachments and detachments. All right, so attachments and detachments are basically any elements that are going to be added to us or taken away from us that are not organic to our platoon. So Organic to our platoon are those 4 squads. However, the most common attachment that we might get, something that's not organic to us, is engineers. So let's say we got plussed up with some engineers because we thought we might need them on the objective, maybe some sappers or some demolitions of some kind. All right? We need to list that under attachment so everyone's tracking, hey, we have this combat multiplier with us. Second is detachments. If anyone's been detached from our element, we need to know about it. We need another platoon to know about it. So maybe our Assault 2 platoon, or sorry, our Assault 2 squad or our 3rd squad was detached and moved over to the 3rd platoon. Everyone needs to know that we are going to be only operating with 3 squads during this operation. Okay? If no one was, we typically just say here, none. If no one was detached or attached, we'll just say none. So everyone's tracking that as well. All right? And this is overall the situation paragraph. Again, the whole purpose of the situation paragraph is to codify, what squads are doing what, and then second, go in and explain the environment. We looked at the AO, where we're operating. We looked at the AI, those things outside of our area of operation that could affect us. We looked at the terrain, the weather, all right? Looked at those together are going to frame the environment, how the enemy is going to potentially frame our environment as well through several courses of action that they might do. They might be how they might dispose themselves along the battlefield. And then we looked at the civilians, the friendly forces, and the attachments and detachments as well to gain that full understanding. And what this is going to do is going to give us the ability and the information we need to go on and actually make a good formulated plan for how we're going to accomplish this mission. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And my name is Captain Justin DeLeon from the University of Iowa. Rangers lead the way.